Hey everyone, I'm Jay.
I'm Sophia.
And I'm Scott, and welcome to which is Betwixt.
Today we're kind of doing kind of like a mental health part two episode, something kind of like an expansion of our previous mental health episode. Um, we want to hit on some main points, like working through depression, healing from trauma and depression, and how how depression and trauma can affect your connection to your craft. And Sophia has really been recommending this topic a lot lately. So I think we're just gonna let Sophia have the floor and open up the discussion, and we're gonna take it from there.
I mean, I feel like I've been wanting this topic for a while, kind of because I'm a little bit of a mess right now. And I'm just gonna be honest. One of the things that's been getting me through it is I'm not hiding stuff anymore. I went through like this very long phase in my life where I thought the solution to my problems was to not let other people see me suffer because it had impacted some of my relationships personally. And now I realize that that's wrong and I need to be honest about it. What I need to do is be respectful of how I share it, and that's like personal growth on my part. But I've been wanting to talk about it because I've been kind of in a place where I haven't been doing the best, and I know a whole ton of people that I know personally. We're all struggling with a lot of stuff right now, and I know 2020 has actually been a really positive year to start off, which really sounds weird to say given the past 4 to 5 years and how it's been a constant kind of going from stepping on Lego to stepping on Lego to stepping on Lego, right?
True.
But 2020 has kind of been giving me a bit of space to heal, and I want to make space for a conversation on that includes everyone. And I've been talking with Scott and Jay about this, and we kind of want to start like making the episodes a little bit more of a question that other people can get in on and make it a discussion and a dialogue. And I feel like right now a big discussion that we as like a community need to have is about depression, isolation, and loneliness, because these are things that really are impacting more people than we're able to properly speak up about right now. And I don't know, I don't really necessarily have any answers. Like, nobody really has hard answers. I have advice, I have things I've been through, but yeah, I'm in a place where I'm working through a lot of childhood issues, as an adult. And
Mm-hmm. Mm.
I just want to make space for all of us to have that discussion and grow. And I notice we do better when we tackle harder subjects. And I want this to not just be a discussion with us three here, which we're about to have, but I want to open this up for the whole community. I want to hear from you on our discussion thread. Like, how do you heal from trauma? How do you heal? What have been your methods? I think being able to share that dialogue with each other is one of the most powerful things we can do as a community to come together and start sharing our experiences in a way that bring us closer as well as bring us healing, and whatever that elusive word may actually mean, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's like white light and magical alleviation of pain or whether or not it's actually working through something. So, yeah, welcome to an episode about healing. Da, 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 da.
um, for me to kind of, I think for me, I think it's my anxiety that's probably been the worst. I don't know if I would really say that I have depression or anything like that. I have experienced um, trauma within the past year. I have experienced that, and that has definitely affected me. Um, and I don't know if I've really begun the process of healing from that. I'm not entirely sure. But for me, to really deal with my anxiety, I've really, especially like literally this past week, actually, I have been trying to get hyper organized, because the problem with my anxiety is that I want to do so many things, right? I want to do a million things, but I'm out of my house for like 10 hours a day, if you factor in work and travel and stuff like that. So I really only have a couple hours a day during the work week to do the things that I want to do, like to put time into the projects that I enjoy, to even just watch a show or play a game. And I literally get anxiety about those things. Like um if I sit down and like read a book for fun or like play a game for fun, like my brain goes, well, you should be doing something else. You should be doing something more productive. Like this isn't productive. What are you doing? And then I guilt myself into not relaxing. I guilt myself into not having fun. So it sounds really bizarre maybe to some, but I've been working I've been using like my Google Calendar and this kind of like light form of bullet journaling to literally schedule time for myself. Like I schedule, like I block out my time for all the projects that I want to work on, and I devote time to it. And I was talking about it before we started recording. I was like, I'm scheduling like social media posts for the podcast. Like this makes me feel good. I have a schedule. I feel organized, and this like it makes me feel happy, and it makes that anxiety feeling go away in some sense. But yeah, I'm literally scheduling time for fun. And I know like for some people it would be like that's fucking bizarre, but okay. But for me it's been working. It's actually been working really well. And I'm actually now working. So now I've gotten like kind of like a working schedule done, and now I'm working, and then I'm creating a schedule for like fun things I want to do, and then the next thing will be figuring out where to block out the time for witchcraft practices. Like I want to develop like daily practices, which I
Which, like,
haven't
I
done
would just like
before.
to point out here, this is weird because I'm the Virgo. Like, are we a
Right.
Virgo moon or something? Like, you gotta send me your full chart sometime, dude. Let me actually
Yeah, I
look
gotta
at
look it up again. Actually, that would be a fun episode, just talking about our birth charts.
it. Oh, we gotta do an astrology episode, yeah.
hmm I don't know why we haven't done that yet.
Oh, because, like, obviously we're gonna miss the most obvious thing that we should be doing.
I'm really bad at astrology, but I will do my best.
Oh, that's why we have the computer do it for us. We have the computer generate our birth charts, and then we just talk shit on ourselves the
Oh,
whole
and I was
episode.
gonna say, don't worry, I can talk shade for all fucking three of us. You just need to be present for me to roast you.
That's fine.
Exactly. So what about you, Scott? What have you been? How have you been?
Honestly, I mean, so to kind of keep on in line with like what we're talking about, I've been making sure. I mean, how do I put this? As I think our viewers know, I'm very big on in the support of therapy. If you can go in any way, whether it's seeing a student at a university on a sliding scale rate, or getting healthcare through your state to go, however, if you can do so. So with that in mind, I've been making sure that I'm completely honest about everything with my therapist. All my setbacks, all of my successes, all of like everything. I don't hide anything. I don't keep anything a secret. If I'm not ready to talk about it, I plan a date to talk about it finally if I'm not ready at the moment. So honesty is really truly a really good policy, as they say. On top of that, I've been working a lot. I found out the other day, early last Saturday, this just past Saturday, that I can communicate with my inner child. Even though I knew I could do this, I just didn't think of it. I could communicate with my inner child, my hurt little Scotty, through my tarot cards. I had the greatest discussion with him while doing a tarot session with myself, and I felt elated. I felt happy. I felt, I don't know, I just had even more clarity. Um, it's really, I mean, it's like I said, it's a process. I don't really know. I don't know if I'm doing anything particularly new. I just know that I'm working through it. And I think that's really the only thing to do when it comes to this stuff is to just keep going, find the place inside yourself where, don't let other people force you to heal. Remember that you heal for you, and that's something that I always had to keep in mind. Still to this day, what other things? I'm trying to think of other things that are pertinent to me, things that I've been
I
thinking
actually had
about.
a question for you, Scott, about your 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 reading that you did, the conversation that you had with your inner child using cartomancy. Like, explain that. I want to know more. Like, what kind of deck did you use? What kind of spread? Like, how did you go about it?
So, I mean, the logical thing for me was I was like, I sat down with, I had I had an oracle, and I had one of my favorite tarot, and I was kind of like, I just was doing like just general readings, and then I was like, okay, but all of a sudden it was like a light bulb. I had like this aha moment where I was like, you've been reading tarot since you were 12 years old, professionally at 19, 18. I was like, and only now you're realizing. So anyway, I realized that I could use the tarot. The tarot would be really good due to the fact that the tarot are very when you read with the tarot are very how do I put this? They're very interpretable. They're malleable. Their interpretations they're suited for the unconscious mind, due to just their nature, due to what they are as a tool. So it really started with that, and then it really just started with me, with like any other tarot reading. But instead of asking like the universe a question, I visualized little Scotty like I do in therapy, and I was like, what do you want to talk about? What is upsetting you? What is hurting you? What makes you happy? And I just started laying down cards. And I did just three cards just to build up a dialogue. And I talked out loud. I know that sounds crazy, but I was alone. But I talked out loud to little Scotty as if like through the cards were like this, as if like I was like video chatting him through tarot, And
So you Skype called your inner child with tarot.
yeah, I mean exactly that. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but
No, not at all. I mean, I schedule fun, so I mean, no, it doesn't sound silly actually.
But it was interesting to see. Firstly, I think all of us know what this is like when you're using a form of divination and a card. Every time you shuffle, that one single card keeps coming up, and you keep drawing it over and over and over again.
And you're like, I know I'm shuffling this damn deck. Like, I know I am.
Right. And he kept presenting me with the Chariot. That seems to be my card right now. And
are you kidding me? That's like literally the card that I have set out for my only card that I have on my tarot on my fucking altar right now. But just no, go on. Just go on. Keep talking.
Synchronicity.
That's my card right now, because in classical Rider Waite, the Chariot generally is a gentleman in a chariot, pulling a white horse and a black horse, right? It's about finding your balance. It's about finding the place inside of yourself where you can just kind of, where you're level, where you're not tipping one way, you're not tipping too far the other, and it's about taking control of your life. And it's funny because this is something I remembered too. The way that this sparked was, I was on TikTok actually. Someone on TikTok presented a really
our new obsession.
I know. Presented a really interesting tarot spread in which you flip your deck face side up and you spread it out and you find the death card. Now, this gentleman says the card on top is what you laid to rest, and the card underneath of death is what is growing in its like in its place or whatever. However,
Mm,
I didn't see it that way. I kind of think like death. I see the grave. So I said,
right.
what is under it is what I've laid to rest, and what is above
Mhm.
it is what is growing in its place.
Mhm.
So when I did that, the tower was under the death card, and the chariot was above it. And I was
Wow.
like, and then it came up again when I was talking to little Scotty, and it kept
Mm.
coming up. So, I just was, yeah. If you can use your tarot deck to talk to your inner archetypes, you know, um, they will respond. Just it'll be a little bit jarring, maybe, but it's pretty potent. It really is. I can't believe I actually posted about it on my Facebook. I just can't believe I never thought about it, and I knew that was an aspect of the tarot. I never went there with it, but I'm really glad that I did. I actually, speaking of scheduling, I promised myself that Friday nights after therapy, um, I will be kind of touching base with little Scotty on my own in a spiritual way through tarot. So after every
Mm.
session, I'm going to come home, and instead of just jumping right into avoidance, I'm going to be like, okay, little Scotty, let's me and you have a personal conversation, without my therapist, just me and you one on one.
Mhm.
And that's going to kind of be my like tarot exercise and help exercise for a while.
That would be a really interesting thing to offer as a reading, like for someone else too. Like to speak to a part of them, you know what I mean, or their own inner child. That would be very interesting. For you, Sophia, what's the significance of you having the chariot out right now?
Um, okay, well, I was gonna say one thing, but I will answer that at first.
Hmm.
I tend to do a reading, not necessarily a reading, but every time I set my altar and like reset it every a set period of time, I draw cards. And what it is it's essentially like I set a theme for my altar, and the cards give me lessons and tell me things that I should pay attention to or look out for, like for example, one of before I ended up like hanging out with a whole bunch of performers who do choir and sing, a card that came up because I like to be a weirdo, and I don't just do just tarot. I do like a mixture of stuff. So my altar cards are often Clow cards, like from the anime card captors. So currently, I'm gonna turn around and take a look. I have the shot. Hang on, let me actually get up and walk over to it.
Can you still purchase those cards?
Yes, you
Yes, he
Hmm.
can.
can.
I have
Are
the
they
shot.
expensive?
No,
No.
I have
Hmm.
the shot, the sleep. Oh yeah, I have the voice out current or the song out currently. It's right in my center, and then on the right hand side I have the jump. I also have the chariot because like every time I'm done a reading with my tarot deck, I shuffle it, and that's when I did the reset on my altar last. And I don't always cover up the front of my deck because I stand my deck on end on my altar, so there's normally a card that faces right, and I don't put the unicursal hexagram on front always. So when I was going to put my cards away the last time, the chariot fell for me, and it fell for me, not for the person I was reading for, because their card that had jumped for them was the Queen of Wands. Um, and I paid attention to that because divination tells me more than I want it to, like way more than I fucking want it to. And I put it down, and to me the chariot represents a lot of like forward movement and momentum. Like Scott said, it is about balance, right? Because otherwise you like fall over and get trampled. But it's also about movement. A chariot, its purpose is movement. It's to carry you somewhere, and sometimes that can be scary. It can be exciting, but it represents like a journey and movement and travel and like new undertakings, right? And like being carried along with the momentum of the world, whether you want to or not. So that kind of touches in on like how I've been meeting a lot of new people, and I'm still trying to find like my social circles out here, because like I deal with a massive amount of loneliness and isolation. Like, to be honest, I've spent most of my life alone, and it's something that I'm working on constantly. Where I'm finally trying to build up those social networks and like have it be made of like people who I really value now that like I'm out and I've transitioned and I'm here and I've arrived as myself, but I don't have that community to reflect that, right? So I'm like constantly trying to find my people, and it's a challenge. And I have met a lot of really cool people recently who I really like, a lot of them, and would very much like to spend a lot more time with them. And like that requires me to grow, because like when you've spent your whole life cooped up in a room by yourself, you're socially awkward and you're afraid of people, and people being nice to you is scary, you know? Like the hardest things for me isn't like someone pulling a knife on me or trying to punch me. I've had that stuff happen before, and I'm fine with it. The real scary stuff is telling people how I feel, is opening up to people in a meaningful way that talks about my pain without overwhelming them, but also lets them know who I am, because all that's a part of me and I shouldn't have to hide it. And Christ, if you saw me do half the things that I do as a person and you didn't understand that I was like hurting most of the time, you might think that I was a very different person than I am, you know? And I think it's like part of starting that dialogue that I mentioned, where I'm trying to be more honest about everything. And part of that comes with like reaching out and like getting outside of my comfort zone and doing something really scary, like talking to people who are really nice to me, which is the scariest thing ever, because I've dealt with people who are shitty to me all the time. That's what I'm used to. The scariest thing is like being welcomed in and not knowing what they see in you or why you even deserve to be there in the first place, you know? Like the challenge isn't necessarily like meeting the people. The challenge is being ready myself to open up for the people who have been kind enough to present me the chance to do so, you know?
Yeah, I kind of get that. I also understand like reacting, I guess maybe somewhat oddly or strangely, to positive like social interactions, you know, like compliments and things like that. Like even at work, like I don't know, like even like at work, if someone's like, hey, you know, like really good job on what you did on this and that, and I'm like, I'm just doing my job, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, like it's just weird to, I don't really know how to I don't know how to accept a compliment.
Yeah, that's part of it, definitely. If someone
Hmm.
compliments me, I'm awkward as fuck, because it's like, what do you see in me? Which is like, it's crazy. And it's like that meme where on one side the person's being incredibly nice to other people, and then on the other side it's like Gordon Ramsay talking to himself saying, "You absolute fucking donkey." Like that's me in a goddamn nutshell, right? Like I feel that.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are like that though, because like we're raised in a society, we live in a society where like it's we're all really kind of beaten down. Like society kind of uses negativity as a tool to reinforce everybody to toe the line, right? Like it's a tool of capitalism and colonialism, right? And I think that leaves a lot of scars on all of us, and we as a people are finally starting to have that conversation more and like talk about how much it affects us and how we're really not as okay as we put on most of the time, you know?
I agree. I
Yeah.
think we have a lot of that in our society. But I do think that in particular, like the queer community is much more open to like there's that meme that goes around where it's like, you talk to your straight friend that you've known for 20 years and you're like, "Oh, hey, how's work? How's the weather? How are the kids?" And then it's like you open up you hanging out with your queer friend that you've known for like 5 days and you're like laying on their couch at like 3 in the morning, like smoking a cigarette and being like, and that's just how, I feel. And that's just like the inner workings of my mind. And
Yeah.
I love that meme that goes around because I'm
Mhm.
like, man, that's just so fucking accurate as to how we are. I mean, I think that's why this podcast is. I think that's why we have good conversations, is because a lot of it is through that queer lens, and queer people really like to be fair, like Sophia, I haven't known you very long. You haven't known Scott very long, and yet we have these incredibly deep conversations that,
Oh
like,
yeah,
I
I
think
know.
some people just like wouldn't have, you know?
A lot of our
Yeah.
Um,
conversations are really scary. I mean, I think even to me, but I mean, I enjoy them though. You know what I mean? But like, I get why a lot of people are scared of some of the conversations we have. Talking about their feelings and talking about the way things are. I guess facing the
It's
reality of things.
Yeah, and it's because it's always going to be easier to talk about something frivolous and not necessarily impactful than it is to be vulnerable with each other.
Mhm. 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 It's funny because I was just reading an article recently. There's a lot of research being done that people who experience, in particular, depression, but a feature of that is they believe that people with depression are seeing the world in a much more realistic way than a lot of other people. And they kind of alluded to like the idea of like those young people that peak really early in life, just out of high school, and they kind of like all like talked about the kids who kind of take longer, like me and stuff, who it's possible that we just see the world in a very different way.
I really definitely do see the world in a different way, I think, than most people. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot like I really think about the abstractness of how we live. Like I think a lot of like the social contract, the unspoken social contract that we all sign in blood when we're born, right? I know
I
it sounds
fucking
really
disagree to that shit, and I swear it out of my blood.
but you know what I mean? Like you're born into this society, right? And it's like, oh, well, you have to follow these rules because it's like, well, I never agreed to this. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But it's kind of this unspoken idea that, well, yeah, you did because you're here and you're alive and you're walking around. It's like, well, I never agreed to this. So like the idea of like, why should I have to like sometimes I think, and I've said this before, I think the older I get, the more radical I get in my thinking. Like, why do I need a piece of plastic to identify myself to you? Like why do you even need to know who I am? Like shit
Yeah.
like that really just ever more, like even more now it just bothers the shit out of me. Like why do I need 6 pieces of paper to do one fucking thing? Why do I need all this shit just to get a fucking bank account? Why do I need a bank account? And I really start to get like really abstract about all this, and I'm like, why? like like I think about like paying the water bill. I'm like, why do I have to pay for water? Why isn't
Water.
water like a human right? Like why isn't that just a right? Like if you live in a home that's connected to public water, like why am I paying for water? Like it just doesn't make any sense. Or like buying a bottle of water or things like that. I also think about things like feminine products, like tampons, pads, things like that. And like why like they're incredibly fucking expensive and not everyone can afford them. Um so I'm like, why can't we just go anywhere and like just go pick up tampons? Like you can walk into most health centers, or I guess public kind of outreach places and pick up condoms. Why can't you pick up like tampons too? You know what I mean? Like it just the social construct, the social contract in which we've all signed without signing it. You know what I mean? It really it really drives me nuts. And that's just kind of, as I get older, my outlook on the world gets more and more, I don't know. I want to say abstract, but I think it's actually the opposite of abstract.
Socialist.
I think
I
it's just
guess.
real.
Yeah, like it's
Socialist.
real.
That's the word.
Or like I work in the real estate industry and I'm like the concept of owning land. I'm like, no, you don't fucking own that land. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you have a house on it and you have a piece of paper that says I own this land, but you really fucking don't. You know what I mean? Because a fucking tornado could take that away from you in a hot second.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get really
Yeah,
angry
that's
at the world sometimes. But yeah, I think you're right. Like people who do have like like depression or maybe even anxiety to some point, like they have this different outlook on the world that other people do. It really frustrates me when I see people that just assimilate. They just assimilate to
Yeah.
the system.
Well, you want people to ask questions, which is very witchy of you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're in magic, we're taught to always, question everything. We're question your gods or question your spirits. Ask the right questions. That's a big one. Are you asking
Mm.
the right questions? But I mean, also too, I mean, it's just, I think if you really think about it though, like a lot of those same people are the people that are attracted to witchcraft and occultism and magic and
The people
mysticism
ask
in general.
questions.
The people that want to think outside the box. Like Jay, I understand what you're talking about. Like for instance, I don't understand why we have to pay for electricity. Electricity can
Right.
be created continuously without, why? It's a continuous resource. It'll never go out. Like there will never be no electricity. You know what I mean?
Right, especially with
So
like, we can generate it from wind and solar and we have all these like clean
magnets, we could generate it from
resources.
magnets.
Well,
Right.
also, it's we don't have as much clean energy as a lot of people think. That's not to say that we couldn't have like green energy as our main sources. We definitely could. It's just like it's a bit of a process, and infrastructure does take work, and it takes a lot of people working together. And like I have certainly been that person whose hands have laid infrastructure. Like I've put electrical wires in the ground. I've run pipes into people's houses. I've hooked up their sewage and their water, and you're paying people for that. When you're paying for your water, you're not just paying for like somebody to make money off of it. You're paying for like the maintenance of the infrastructure of the system that delivers it to you. But I still think that should be free and just a cost allocation of public taxes, right? I
Right,
don't.
like, and I always say, and like, this is like one of the things that a lot of like a lot of Americans will, I don't want to pay higher taxes. Yeah, but if it's going toward actual
Man,
fucking things that
if
improve
y'all
life,
if y'all weren't bombing the whole fucking world into the like to the Middle Ages, like you could have all that shit and more. It just keeps going to rich defense contractors because it makes billionaires richer because that's what we've been doing for ages.
A very long time. Yep. Yep.
But
and I'm
yeah,
not saying that we were a better people or a happier people in the past or before, I don't know, the Industrial Revolution. I'm not saying we were better or happier, but
Well,
it
no.
was certainly a different outlook. And I think sometimes in witchcraft we kind of like, oh, the old days, and especially like older people, maybe older witches and stuff like that, like, or even older, I wouldn't say older queers because it was actually a much rougher
I was gonna say queers.
experience
It's the
then.
exact opposite.
Yeah, for queers would be the exact opposite. But for witches, well, back in the beginning, the old days, it's like, okay, well, this is today, and I understand because even I get nostalgic for, I get nostalgic for my own, maybe not my childhood because it was hard growing up, trans and this and that, but the idea of like for me in particular, I think for all of us, we grew up in that time period where like we remember being outside all the time, like the internet being in the home was just starting to really become
Mm.
a thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
I That's the thing, depending on how rural you are too. That's more city
Right.
life.
Yeah, I mean, like me and Scott, we both grew up in a city. I don't know, like, did you have like, because you grew up rural,
No.
Sophia.
And
You didn't.
we didn't have, like, dial-up came and my dad used it for business. We maybe got a computer around when I was like 10, yeah, but it wasn't like a lot. We couldn't do a lot with it. And like by the
Well,
time
same
the
here.
internet
Like we had
became
dial-up too.
regular,
Like all I could play was
yeah,
like Gumby Paint.
but like by the time that the internet was regular and we were doing shit, I had become a teenager and like it was finally starting to kick up then. But like most of my computer use was at school.
Hmm.
And like my family finally got a computer eventually, but even then, like, it's not a lot and it's still there. And like I was graduated from high school by the time the first like portable mobile devices were starting to come out. So it's like
Hmm.
different based on like how old you are and where you grew up, right? We're also kind of like deviating from the topic, and I want to kind of segue back to the
If
point that you were kind of getting. Go ahead.
I if I could just say to kind of help with this is what segueing a little bit too back into it, but it's interesting how we're talking about mental health, and it's interesting how naturally we all gravitated toward social implications to our mental health, and I
Hmm.
think it really speaks to a lot of people and a lot of communities, in particular, a lot of impoverished and minority communities, how much the state of our society, how much of that um, really affects us and really moves us in not always the best ways, causing
I agree.
traumas and things like that. I think that's I'm sorry, Sophia, I hope that helped you a little instead of
I
hindering you.
mean, not quite, but it is a point to make that I wouldn't like want not made too, right? It's just different. What I was going to segue to, and that is a good point, was Scott kind of, or Jay kind of talked about briefly, like the trauma of growing up queer. And I kind of wanted to loop this back to like, the discussion of like trauma and healing. And like, yeah, definitely social factors are a huge tie to that, right? And like, so is queerness. And like, your everything and like how much you go through while you're growing up like affects you and what you have to deal with as an adult and in the rest of your life so directly that like you can't divorce the two issues from each other, and
I
like
agree.
we all do
Mm-hmm.
kind of have this like collective trauma if you're in the betwixt, whether you're racialized, whether you're queer, whether you're got a minority status of various different degrees. Like you live with the trauma of that because it's not exactly easy and you have shit you go through, right? Like I'm not going to go into the specifics, but I have a lot of trauma related to being a closeted queer trans woman, you know? And like I don't talk much about my family, but like on my dad's side of the family, like the Métis side, we have such a history of addiction and mental health. My brother got diagnosed with anxiety. My sister had other stuff that I'm not going to say because I know that like I'd have to ask her ahead of time if I could say it. But like we've all been diagnosed with shit. Like mental health is an issue. I'm a fucking ruthless drug addict. I'm lucky that like what I'm addicted to is weed, but like, man, I will smoke a half ounce in a week easily if you let me. And that's a lot of weed. And like my cousin's living on the street homeless and she's addicted and like so is her mother and like there's a lot of complicated like generational issues that'll affect you too, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you don't
Absolutely.
always get like the same slice that everybody else does, but we all have in common is that like we're all healing something, right? And we're all in
Mm-hmm.
this together. And if there's anything that really pulls us through this, it's each other. Like for how fucked up the world is, for how many challenges we have facing ourselves right now, like it's always together the answer is where we find it, right? Like, it's always coming together that makes solutions happen. It's not in trying to solve things by ourselves or trying to put the weight of the world on your shoulder. It's community, you know? And like, I couldn't be where I am right now if I didn't have all the people who've supported me along the way. Granted, sometimes it's been a lot less than I would have liked, but no person's an island, and I think like we gotta learn to lean on each other a little bit more and ask for help, you know?
I agree. I agree completely. Yeah.
I mean, I was gonna say to speak a bit about the trauma of growing up queer, you know, and I never really thought of it as trauma until now, because like when I think trauma, I think of like some big event, you know what I mean, like some massive event that happened once, and like you're kind of messed up from it. That's what I go to when I think of trauma, but I never really thought of just the experience of growing up queer and other was traumatic, but yeah, I suppose it is.
It is
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, and I just think of, you know, like basically the way that I was socialized. One, I mean, kids were to be seen and not really heard. So, and thankfully, like I had a sister who was around the same age as me, so we kind of were able to like entertain ourselves and, you know, stay out of the hair of the adults and whatnot. Um, but the other thing too is the way that I was instructed to interact with the world, and that was basically be afraid of it. I was taught to be afraid of the world, because my dad would say, like I remember, I'd be like, hey, why can't I stay out until after dark and play with the rest of the kids on the block? And it was, oh, well, because you're a girl. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why can't I stay out late? He's like, well, because people like to hurt little girls in this world, and weird people come out after dark, and so you can't go out after dark. And I was just like, what the fuck, you know? Like like even at a young age I was like, that's fucked up. So like instead of making some kind of effort to maybe make a change, you just accept the fact that people hurt little girls, and that's it. That's just the rules. Them's the rules. That's it. And it was also double hard for me too, because I, like, you know, you have people saying to you, you are a girl, you are a boy. Like I had people saying to me, you are a girl, you're a girl, you're a girl, my whole life. And I'm like, it just doesn't really compute to me though. I don't like, I hear what you're saying, but I don't understand what the fuck you're saying to me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get you.
Mm-hmm.
And
And I guess
that's
that's
like,
where the
good.
trauma comes in. That it's like the where that trauma comes in. Like someone's telling you you're this, you're this, you're this, and you're like, I hear you, but no. But you
Also,
don't have the ability to communicate that.
yeah, and like the trauma of being forced into a role that you don't want to be socialized for. Like how many times I was told to man the fuck up, or how I
Mm-hmm.
got put into literal construction at age 15. I got dumped into shit that was for grown ass fucking men because it was supposed to man me the fuck up because I was a very effeminate kid, you know, and fuck man, it's damaging.
Absolutely.
Do you think you learned anything from your time in construction though? Like I know like we talk about our
Uh,
traumas as terrible things, but
to be
do you think
honest,
we learn from trauma?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I learned. I learned bitter truths. I learned that people who you think sometimes care a lot about you will be very selfish and use you and not see the negativity of what they're doing and still always find a way to frame themselves as the good guy. I learned how, in a way, to be a warrior, to be hurt and shrug it off because it's for the betterment of the company, to not seek medical aid when you properly need it, to work yourself until you have sunstroke and you're about to pass out and people call you a little bitch for taking a day off when you're sick, or how to recover from almost losing my hand, or what it was like to almost die time and time and time again, or watch sometime you were almost incinerated, and you learn how to live in a world that's not okay and is never going to take care of you. And you learn to come through some really fucked up shit that you might not survive, but you do because you learn how to be careful. And I learned to be self-dependent and watch out for myself because I know a lot of the time there ain't going to be somebody else to do it. Sorry if that's too bitter.
No,
and dark.
it's just incredibly valuable things to learn at such an early age, but also sad that you had to learn them in that way at such an early age.
Scott talks a lot about her inner child. The theme of my life is that I didn't really get to have a childhood, right? Like I was like fatally sick when I was 5, you know? I don't have an inner child. I don't have something like that that I can communicate with. Nothing scares me more than the idea of being a child and not having agency again and having my emotions completely invalidated and not having. I wasn't even allowed to have an opinion when I was a teenager. I was told by my dad that I was like too young to have an opinion, right?
I had that same kind of experience.
I had to be an adult ever since I was a kid. I had to take care of myself. I had to teach myself to shave when my dad wasn't there, teach myself to cook, fucking learn how to not die on the job site. The only thing that my dad taught me was how to be a compliant member of society and how to be a cutthroat fucking businessman and to understand when somebody's going to put a knife in your back, to put a knife in their throat first. Yeah.
So I think it's actually really beautiful that you take all that and you decided to be like, okay, I get it, all right, but then you're kind of doing the opposite of that now. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of like saying we all need to like be gentle with each other and understand and communicate and things like that.
Yeah, because
I like that. That you've taken that.
Go ahead.
I was just saying you've taken that, you've extracted the lessons that you could learn, but you've thrown away the rest of the bullshit that came along with it.
To be honest, I haven't. I still carry a lot of it with me. There's a lot that I wish I could let go of, like what I just said there. If someone's gonna stab you in the back, stab them in the throat before they can. Like that's the cold hard raw survival instinct that comes down to when I'm like right down to the fucking wire. And like I know what that's like because I've had to live my life in survival mode so much, and I've had like people jump me and try to like do horrible things to me, and I'm like I have had to be ready for that shit, right? While I choose to do better and I deliberately work at healing, which we should start talking about the healing part soon, I still have the scars and I still know exactly what it's like to be in those dark places because they're not gone. You still carry them with you, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of the healing part of it, I was actually going to kind of segue into that. What things have you done since those, and this is also open to you as well and to me. So what things have we done since these traumatic experiences or rough time periods in our lives, you know, what things have we done to heal from that, or have we not?
I can just follow. Actually, you know what? I've talked a lot. Please, Scott, you go ahead.
Well, you know, it's funny because one of the things that is very apparent is that I think people with trauma, you will always be changed. Trauma will always leave a scar. And you learn tools, even in therapy, to learn to adapt, to learn to cope, to learn to, you know, heal doesn't mean what I think people think it means. Many times getting better as far as trauma is concerned is more about how we look at the trauma. It doesn't ever go away. So, I mean, like, for instance, for me, I will probably have a panic attack, you know, they may become lessened. And to say that I'm healed, I will forever be healing. That's what I'm trying to say. I will forever, until the day I die, be healing from what I've experienced. But it's more for me, healing is just about proving myself that I can be more than what I am. Like, I could be a better me regardless of it, and I can learn how to understand it and walk through my pain instead of letting it rule my life. Um, and suddenly things become different. You become better as far as your actions, as far as your even your thought processes. But trauma changes you kind of forever. It's always kind of, I mean, like, you can't be cured. There is no cure. You can manage it in a very healthy way. So healing for me is like a forever journey. You know, when I first started talking, when I first to my friends, you guys, my family, whoever, and was like, I finally put myself in the therapy. It's the greatest thing I've ever done for myself, for instance. I've understand that that's going to be a part of my life forever. I will have a therapist probably forever, even even hopefully when I get my degree, I will still have a therapist. You know what I mean? So for me, it's a life commitment. Healing is a lifelong commitment, and it's finding the place inside of myself that made it worth it. You know, realizing that I had a lot more to offer. You know, people come to me already for advice. They come to me because they're sad. They come to me because they're lonely. They come to me because, they don't know how to handle a situation. And, I have, and I do my best to do what I can for these people, my friends and whoever. And friends bring me their friends that I've never met for advice or something, or reading, but sometimes I think that all kind of applies. And they come back to me later and they're like, thank you so much. Thank you so much for putting it in perspective. Thank you for listening to me, just hearing me out while I cried or while I vented or something, And I realized that I have the power to heal people before it's too late, before their trauma may be too much, or even if it's only just to help people to realize that they can also start their healing journey. They can also begin to empower themselves and to take back the parts of them that were taken from them by circumstance and people. I hope that all made sense.
No, it does, and I can segue that into a big part of mine, because like you said, that healing begins when you frame it differently. And while that may not necessarily be 100% true for me, that it, like the beginning point, it definitely did help, right? Like what helps me make sense of it all isn't necessarily like that one day it'll be gone, right? One day I'll hurt less. I hurt less over time continuously. But what it's really about for me is being able to help other people. And I understand, if you know the lessons of astrology, Chiron, the wounded healer. The lesson of that is that, like, as a healer and someone who wants to help other people in the world, I wouldn't be able to do my job if I didn't know pain. I couldn't truly help somebody who wanted to end their life if I didn't know that pain, I don't think. At least not for me. And I'm not saying that has to apply to other people. But because I've been through so much, I can relate to people. I can be that person who sits down next to somebody who's going through so much and they could look at me and be like, you couldn't possibly know what I'm going through. And I could look at them back and be like, no, but I could probably say the same to you. And at least we're comrades in that, you know? And I think that's what helps me get through it all in the end, is the fact that I can do something with this. I can help other people who've been hurt. It doesn't make me less of a person that I'm traumatized and I have all these problems. I am like, it's kind of like the broken vessel, those pots that get smashed and glued back together with gold. It's kind of like that, like my damage and how I've cobbled myself back together is the essence of my beauty. And to be able to share that with other people, it doesn't necessarily solve it. It doesn't necessarily make sense of why it happened, but it gives me a direction and a purpose with it, you know? And to be able to view that all as something that I needed to be who I am, to make the difference in the world that I, at the core of my being, want to make. How could I do it if I didn't come through it all, you know? And it's just like Scott said, like, people start coming to you, right? And I haven't had a therapist in a long time. The last therapist I saw cost me way too much money, and I've never actually had one who helped. But I've managed to be my own therapist. And because of that, I've been able to help so many people. And in the end, whether people remember me or not is irrelevant, because I've lifted people up. That makes it worth it, you know?
Yeah.
I think healing comes for me when you have purpose of what to do with it, you know?
Charles Dickens is quoted as saying, "No one is useless in this world who lightens the burden of another."
Mm,
Yeah, definitely.
And
I
I
like that a
absolutely
lot.
love that. Me too.
But yeah,
I
that's
kind
what
of
healing means to me. What does it mean to you?
I kind of like what you were saying at the end there, Sophia. For me personally, I think that the first steps that I've taken toward healing, I think a lot of my trauma was growing up queer and growing up trans and not having the language to communicate that even to myself. Um, and I think a lot of the things that I hold on to is I regret not coming out sooner because I had an inkling of being trans, I guess in my late teens, early 20s, but I really suppressed it really quickly. So I really came out, I guess, closer to my mid 20s. I was like 24, 25, something like that. And I regret not coming out sooner. So, but for me, the first steps that I took toward healing was finally coming out for that, I guess, the final time. Because, I had come out as gay earlier in my life, but I think coming out as trans um, was that first step I took toward healing because I could finally be honest. I could finally be like, okay, this is the situation because I fought it for the longest time. And I was even one of those people that were like, oh, these fucking people thinking that they're other genders that they're not, that's fucking bullshit. Like it's almost like a lot of people they say a lot of homophobic shit, but they're actually like gay and they're just like suppressing their own queerness. That was me like in my teenage years. I was like, oh fuck, I'm a lesbian, I'm this, I'm that, whatever. Fuck men. Why would I ever want to be a man? So I was really just suppressing that, and it was just really not good. It just wasn't good. Um, so I think when I came out, it was like a huge healing step for me because I was like, you know what? I'm really not a fan of men in general. You know what I mean? Like I'm not like especially like cishet men, like typical men, you know what I mean? I'm not a fan of them. I
Yeah.
don't I don't get it. I don't understand male cishet male culture. I still don't fucking get it. And it pisses me off when I just I don't know. It just sounds like caveman grunts to me sometimes. I'm like, be fucking civilized. What the fuck?
I mean, you're not too far off.
Right. But I think that was a big thing for me because I'm like I don't vibe with cishet men, and yet I know that I am a man, and I know that I am, and it was painful and also liberating to come to that conclusion. Um, and and it cost me some things when I came out. Like I did have a long-term relationship that was pretty much, I mean, we were kind of on our way out for other reasons, but I think that kind of was the nail in the coffin when I had finally come out. So I'd lost a long-term relationship. I didn't really lose any friends, which was good, and thankfully, I really thought I was going to lose my parents, but I didn't. They were kind of like, "Yeah, we kind of saw that coming," and I was like, "Oh shit." Um, so I didn't lose very much, but I felt like I lost something in a good way. I lost the old me. I almost feel like when I hear
Oh
like my
yeah.
old name, like when I hear my old name, I'm like, who's that? Like who's that person? I feel like completely different. And a friend of mine was saying to me, he was like, my friend Rick, he was like, it's weird. I feel like I've known you twice. Like I feel like I've met you twice. Like because we were friends in high school, so he knew me, before transition, and he knows me now, and I'm like, well, which one do you prefer? He's like, I mean, you're both cool, but like obviously like we get to use the same bathroom now, so that's pretty cool. and, and every time
That's a
like we're
good
out
point.
somewhere and we both walk into the men's room, he's like, this feels right, like this just feels like the way it should have been like all this time. And I'm like, yeah, it does. I just wish the stalls were fucking cleaner so I could fucking pee. But
Oh
anyway,
god, that's
um
a mood.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that was my first steps toward healing. There is another traumatic kind of thing that I have gone through recently, but I went through it with Katie, and it's very personal to her, so I don't feel like, even though I was directly involved in it, it's not exactly my story to share. But that is the thing that I have to work on to start healing from. And I'd be comfortable with talking to you both privately about it, but it's not something I'd want to share on the podcast because, like I said, it's not my
And I know,
story to tell.
and I know exactly what you're talking about already. Like
Yeah.
Me too.
yeah.
hmm But that is definitely something that it's kind of. I don't like the idea of New Year's resolutions, but in the year of 2020, that is something that I am going to really work through, because and I mentioned it before, when I try and get to a zero space or a neutral space or just kind of calm the fuck down, I go right there, and I just need to work through that. Um,
Yeah.
but so I feel like there's two main things that I had to kind of get over in life, and that was finally being real to myself and coming out as trans, and now this new thing kind of presented itself to me, and now I'm like, okay, this one's a big one. I almost feel like this
Yeah.
one's harder to get through than the first one.
And that just makes me want to say that like healing is not a linear journey. Scott said it is a continual thing, and that's very correct. But like each step looks different, right? Like coming out as trans was so healing to me as well. Like what you're talking about struck like home so true.
Hmm.
And when I was in that point in my life where I needed to come out when I was 25, I
Yeah,
like
same.
I could not heal at all until I dealt with that. And I
Hmm.
think a big thing about healing is being true to yourself, being true to the people around you, like
Absolutely.
being honest, being vulnerable,
That was just like
like,
what I was saying in the beginning. Remember when I was saying about like how I've particularly made a point to be honest
yep,
about
with
like
your
where I'm at.
therapist.
And it's like what you were saying, Sophia, I don't know if you said it when we were recording or maybe before we were recording, when you were like, I just keep telling people I'm fine. I just keep telling people I'm okay. And you're like, nope, I'm dying inside.
Oh, well, no, not quite. What I said
Mm,
was I don't like people to know that I'm not
right.
doing well very often because I've
Hmm.
had it really impact a lot of my relationships because I used to trauma dump on
Right.
people in a way that wasn't okay, and I would give them way more fucking information than they needed or were even capable of advising me on, and then I would swamp people and they
Mm.
wouldn't want to be around me because it's like you
It
can
was
be
too
a
much for
downer.
them to
Yeah,
process.
but it's like, yeah, it's like I asked for help with someone to get me my new bed delivered to my house, right?
Mm,
It was like a secondhand bed for $50. And I paid the
mm,
girl $20 for the ride, and I was like thankful and shit. But in like the 10 minutes I knew her, she was telling me about like her ex-roommate physically assaulting her and
Oh
shit, and I'm
boy.
like, whoa, this is
Yeah.
way too much. I just fucking need my bed right now. I did not sign up to hear your fucking shit. God damn. And it's not like she was in a dangerous situation and was asking for help. She was
Hmm.
just like, oh, look, see that house there? 3 years ago, I was physically assaulted and kicked out. And it's like,
And you're like,
fuck.
whoa, buddy.
Yeah.
Damn.
And like, it was a real quiet car ride after that. And
Uh,
I kind of used to do that a little bit to people, right?
and then
Like,
now
I
you
would,
realize.
yeah. And then for a while, I was like, no, I can't tell you anything. It would
Mm,
traumatize you just to hear my trauma, which it actually can for some people, not gonna lie, because it's intense. But
but I think if you're in a
I can't
good,
talk about it at all. There's a fucking balance, dipshit.
yeah, like I
Yeah.
think if you're in a situation and someone's like, listen, I'm okay, lay it on me, then I
Well,
think,
I've gotten better about talking about it in a way that doesn't give people fucking details that make them stressed out.
hmm.
Like I can say I had a really rough childhood. That doesn't stress them out to hear. They know, oh, okay, she went through some shit. I'm not laying it on them.
But does that do enough for you?
Yeah, because
It does.
because here's the thing. I've processed it. If I have something that I need to work through, I'm gonna sit down and write a fucking poem about it.
Mm.
Okay?
So you have
I
outlets.
Yeah, and like I know that random ass fucking Susan on the street isn't gonna be able to give me the therapeutic advice that I need to get through a situation. And if
Hmm.
anything, I'd come to a close friend with it, right? Who we already have an established relationship of trust and a mutual exchange like that, right? So like the most of the time that I'm talking to people about what I'm going through, it's not because I want them to fix it or give me advice. I just want them to know why I'm feeling down at the time, right? Or why I'm acting the way I'm acting. I just want them to be like connected with me and understand me as a person and that I'm going through some shit and I will be okay. But
Actually, this brings
that's
me
what it
back to when I first met you.
is. I was a
This
fucking mess, wasn't I?
I'm not even thinking about that. I was thinking about because I met you through Transmission Gaming, which is
Yeah,
we should probably plug that more because that's a great place for
3 years
people to
ago.
go. Yeah, like 3 years ago, and Transmission Gaming is a Discord group for trans people who play games, and it's a
Created
super
by
cool group.
Nicotine.
Yeah, we both yeah, and created by Nicotine, who is a trans woman. Check her out. I'll put links. It's fine. Free promos for Nikki all day. So
Or
so
maybe she
anyway,
should promo us because she's like hella Twitch
yeah,
famous.
she's like partner now, and I'm like, what the
No,
fuck?
she's like front page Twitch on fucking
Yeah,
Pride
she's
Month
like
sort of
queen of
deal.
Twitch now. Like, man, our Lord and Savior, Nicotine. Anyway, um, so that's how me and Sophia met. So really, I think I just stumbled into your stream randomly. I think that's what it was, and we just kind of
But
started talking. But
I
you,
actually think what it was, because my memory is autistic levels,
uh,
we had the trans clan together and you were looking for a trans clan. I don't know how you found Transmission Gaming, but there was the first three members were myself, Lillian, and Vikram. And
yes.
then after that, you were the fourth one. You were the person who joined right after that, and then there was Ruby.
Yes, it's because it was a lot of PC gamers and we were like, "Hey, what about the PS4 people? We're gonna do our own thing." I think that's what it
Yeah,
was.
that's
Yeah.
exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of how me and Sophia met. So we met in a very like random, it's really fucking random, a really
It's
random way.
it's almost like
Um
fate.
but I remember there was this person in your chat all the time that would just come
Shut
into the
up.
chat and just dump and just like, well, today was that like you were a therapist, and a lot of people do this to Twitch streamers. I noticed this is a big problem, and it's kind of something that I just realized that so as people get to know our podcast more, and if we become more public figures, this could happen, and I just kind of want to make like a statement and just say like it's okay to tell us what's up and what's going on. But we are by no means licensed therapists. So we may not always have an answer or a solution, but we will definitely always listen and respond in some way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even if all I can do to respond is like give a heart react to an emotionally heavy thing, I'll have read it, even if I can't respond.
Mhm.
Like there will be someone there, but there's only so much we can engage with certain things, and we do have to have boundaries for
Mhm.
ourselves as well, right?
Absolutely.
Mhm. But
Because like
yeah,
I
I kind of thought about all that. It just kind of came flooding back to me.
well no, I mean I think about it too. Like when I finally get my shit together and get my degrees and stuff.
Mhm.
Like it's not like that wouldn't even be professional even if I did have my degree. You know what I mean? Like
Oh my God, we're gonna have a fucking we actually will literally have to have a legal disclaimer on an episode saying that Scott is not giving
Yeah.
like
Like
advice here.
yeah.
I mean
Fuck.
actually
Wow.
I have
We'll talk to a lawyer
I'll,
eventually. That's years down the road.
so I mean I have to get my bachelor's. It'll only be 2 years, and then I'll have the certification, but I would have to work under a licensed master's or doctorate.
Okay, cool.
But,
We'll cross that bridge in 2 years.
yeah. But yeah, that, I mean we do have to cross it. I just wanted you guys to be aware of it. Sorry, Jay.
No, it's all
You're
good.
good.
But yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of thinking about that. So it's like the idea of like yes, like here we promote and encourage people to open up, talk, discuss, share. Tell us if your day was bad. Tell us if your day was good. Talk to people in the community. But please understand that like, there has to be levels, and if someone straight up says like I'm comfortable with you just dumping everything on me, like go for it, then okay. Like it's like the rules of consent apply even when you're
Yeah.
sharing and being vulnerable and opening up, and I think that's just important to remember.
In fact, that's a dialogue we as a community are gravely needing to talk about
Mm.
is verbal consent on trauma sharing. Like it's
Yeah.
fun, like I have gotten so much better at talking about stuff without giving details, like saying, "Hey, I'm dealing with mental health stuff right now. I'm okay, but I need a bit of time to respond." Instead of being like, "Oh my God, I got laid off," and just like dumping all my shit on someone. Like
Right.
I've
Yeah.
developed that skill, and like I feel like us older queers kind of got to pass that information on a little bit because we went through a lot of pain to get that knowledge, and I'm sure we can save a lot of pain by it. But like you really got to ask someone before you start talking about stuff,
Yeah.
especially in a community where so many of us have our own like
Our own brand of
traumas
bullshit.
and triggers.
Yeah.
You could be thinking your burden is the heaviest thing in the world, and you could start dumping it on someone who's been so much that they're a hair away from cracking and you don't even know. You
Hmm.
gotta ask people. You gotta have consent to be able to share stuff that's really that heavy. And it's gotta be okay for people sometimes to say no, you
Hmm.
know?
And it
And
doesn't mean
and
that they
people
don't care about you.
yeah, it means that they care about themselves as well. And
Mhm.
if they can't engage with it, maybe they're not the person for that, right? It's not that you're alone. It's that we have to share stuff responsibly in a way that is mindful of everybody's healing and everybody's traumas too.
And actually, I think this episode might actually be a good example of that. This like entire episode right here, because we kind of talked about, some really deep stuff, but you know, I mean, I don't feel particularly burdened by anything that either of you have shared. Like
Yeah.
I feel okay. If anything, I
Mhm.
just feel more thoughtful and reflective, just
Yeah.
on everything that we've talked about.
It's because this has been like a dialogue. It's a discussion of like how we work through stuff rather than us like dumping our issues on the table, right? What were you gonna say?
Mhm. Huh?
I thought you were gonna say something.
Oh no, I was just, you know, uh, kind of just making a noise in agreement.
Yeah.
So, do we kind of want to summarize, like, are there any other particular, actually, you know
I
what
have
we
a
didn't get
little.
into?
I was gonna say, do we have any like magical touch stones on like
Yeah,
rituals
that's,
and shit?
yeah, that's what I was going to ask, like tools and stuff like that.
We
And, you know,
also
what we didn't get into is,
disconnection from the craft.
yes, we didn't get into
Hey,
that.
we're on the same fucking page today, bud.
Yeah, we're doing good. I'm telling you, this schedule of mine is just, it's
And
improving my life.
yeah, and having like real discussions always takes it to the next level, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, what do you want to get into first? Do you want to get into kind of like tools that you use magic-wise, or you want to get
I'd
into the
say if
disconnect?
anybody has a point they want to jump into, let's just go there.
To get into as far as how health affects my craft, it's draining, obviously, right? There are many times where I just I can't do anything. There are times where I just want to, I want to avoid due to my fear avoidance, or I just want to lay in bed or be on the computer and do nothing, something mindless. Um, and the thing is, witchcraft is none of those things. Witchcraft is not doing nothing, which is not mindless, witchcraft is hard and it takes effort. The thing is that I find that I become worse the more I ignore it. I don't like the feeling of ignoring my craft. I don't like the feeling of my altars becoming dusty and my spirits just kind of being like, hey, we're waiting for you. The good thing about my spirits is that I have this wonderful relationship in which they kind of come to the point to they're like, you never do anything unless we light a fire under your ass. um, so this time it's been a little bit different. Sometimes they kind of lead me back in, and they've been doing that, but they were like, "You're a bit of a different person now." They said you have a different outlook on things. You've been doing really good in therapy. You've been, kind of really talking with your shadow and doing all that work. And they were like, "How about rededication?" All of a sudden, they inspired me to write this wonderful self rededication ritual. And really, it's funny because it's not worded like kind of in the way of like someone starting out would dedicate themselves. It's more like a promise, an oath to uphold the things that I've let go of or the things that I've always held on to. Um, but it feels like the right time. I feel, it's funny, I feel new in a different way because of all the work I've been doing. Not that I'm saying I'm better or whatever, just different, even from, then. So, yeah, I just want to, I guess I want to make sure that I'm making responsibilities for myself so that way I'm forced to stick to them. And I think kind of swearing, making sure I take oaths and do what I have to do with my spirits and stuff. I think it'll help me, creating a schedule for my craft, keep me moving on my mundane life, finding work and doing all that, going back to school and, getting all that situated. So yeah, yeah.
I am actually incredibly excited for this dedication ritual for a couple reasons. Actually, you know what I was just thinking of? So you said you pulled the chariot, right? You kept getting the chariot, and the chariot
hmm
is pulled by a white and black horse. Was that the inspiration for the white and black candle that you're using? The white and the black candles?
You know what's weird? I no, that wasn't like the logic behind that was not that, but
Hmm.
I just realized now that you're saying it, that's really freaking weird.
Weird or witchcraft?
Witchcraft, but weird with a Y.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, so I have also been feeling a disconnect from my craft. So I've been going through a lot of stuff. So when I was living with Katie, I was kind of in this like recovery mode because I had lost a good paying job, and then we couldn't afford the apartment anymore, so then we all had to split up and move in different places. So that's how I ended up with Katie living in her parents' basement. It was just, I don't regret the experience. Like, it's a life experience, but it was also not the greatest. You know what I mean? Like when you're just like living with we were in one room. I had to condense an entire apartment into one room with three cats, and it's a lot. And it's just a lot. So finally, I remember talking about it forever in past podcasts of me moving and this and that. So me and Joyce are living together. We're kind of renting this house from my grandfather that he owns. So I'm very fortunate to be in a new space. I have actual space to move around and do things, and then I have this problem of like I get fixated on things. So like when we were moving, I was fixated on moving, and then when we finally moved, I was fixated on unpacking and getting everything just right and just so. Like I can't possibly do any magic until everything is in its place. And I'm like, what? Like nothing. Like this house isn't ever going to look perfect. It's an old house, you know what I mean? And like the basement has like three different generations worth of clutter in it, and I really wanted that to be my working space, but right now it's our back guest bedroom. So there is a like a twin bed in there, so if someone stays over, but I also use that as like my witchcraft space, and Joyce is using it as their makeup room. So it's it's a double kind of thing, but usually we're not in there at the same time, so that works out too. Because I wouldn't want to uh, have a bunch of incense going while Joyce is doing a face full of makeup. That would be rude. But so I get fixated on these things of like, well, this has to be done before I do this, and this has to be done before I do this, and I really need to get myself out of that. So I have had a huge disconnect from my craft because I've been using every excuse in the book to not do witchcraft. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I think maybe I'm just having some anxiety about it not being perfect. Like I've had this in my head that I need everything to be perfect, and I'm like, no, why am I doing that? You know, why is this happening in my brain right now? But I need to get back into it, and I went over Scott's recently, and Scott showed me the rededication ritual that they had written, and I was like, this is great. And I need to do this because I realized I haven't done a dedication or a rededication since I was like 16, 17 years old in my Wiccan days. It's been a long time, and how I look at it is I dedicated the old me to Wicca, but the new me is dedicated to the practice of witchcraft, which is similar but very different at the same time. So I'm really excited to do this dedication ritual, and also Joyce will be joining us for this ritual, and it will be their first dedication ritual, which is really cool to witness someone's first.
Yeah, that's really cool. I was just gonna say, I'm kind of doing something, and I don't want to elaborate on it too much, that you two might be interested in, and I will send you an invite to it. It's basically like an occult group that's kind of like a magical gym to go to.
That sounds cool.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's also something that me and Scott were talking about. We want to get like witch study nights going.
Yeah, that'd be fucking rad. That's right up the alley of what this is. I'll send you a link after, and I'm not gonna name it is on here because like I don't want to plug it. It's like a small private group, and it's not like a big thing, you know?
But yeah, we were thinking about doing witch study nights, and at first I thought about like getting physically together, but I don't know, like Sophia, if you want to get on that too, it would be a lot easier to schedule because then it could just be like through like a Skype call or something. So
Yeah, but there's a lot that you can't do on Skype, you know?
true, but at least like for a discussion, maybe like a book club or something, a witchy book club. Or at least talk about the things that we could do. But either way, that's something I want to do too. Like I need, like I always liked school, so I always liked having a curriculum to follow, and I think that's why this schedule thing is working out for me so well, because I'm like making a syllabus for my life. So yeah, I've just always liked structure to a point. I like structure that I create for myself. I don't like structure that is imposed upon me.
Definitely.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah. If I could touch on like how I'm trying to like reconnect to my craft and stuff. I'm at a weird place with that because, like, I do very often results-based magic, which I don't want to toot my horn, but I get really good results with. And the problem is the best techniques I have are fucking so minimalist that it almost feels like I'm not doing magic sometimes. And I know that it's a false feeling of stagnation because, like, I'm doing tons of shadow work, you know, like confronting my negative aspects and like working on growing through it. I'm like doing tons of like direct manifestation and like pursuing my true self and manifesting my true will. But because I'm not like doing rituals or doing spells or doing conventional spells that require ingredients, and I'm not like doing any type of like witchcraft, devotional, or religious practices, I get a little bit of imposter syndrome with that sometimes, of like, I wish my craft looked like other people's sometimes. I feel so like inauthentic because, like, for a spell to help my girlfriend get a job, I literally just pinched some herbs and tossed them in the air over her and said a couple of words of intention and kissed her. Like,
But that's witchcraft, though.
That's very witchy to me.
I mean, that's, I don't
Maybe
know.
that's the um. You don't. So you have the chaos magic background, which is kind of linked to ceremonial magic. Yes? No?
Chaos magic is fucking a piss in the wind. It's whatever you want it to be, bud.
Okay. Um. I don't know, like maybe that, because I used to be like that with magic, is like everything needs to be thus and so, and I needed it to be elaborate, and you know what I mean. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, I made a protection charm for Joyce. Just I put 3 cat whiskers in a little glass vial, tied it up with a string, and said, "Hang this from your mirror." Done.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean though, like when you feel like I don't know,
I
maybe
don't
you,
look
you, you
legit.
feel like you have to put on more of a show, even though
I
you know
like,
it's gonna have the same result.
yeah, see, like, I'm gonna also touch on another thing. Here's a bit of a problem in the witchcraft community. It's so easy to look at really big name witches, not to fault them, because like a lot of them are actually really fucking nice people. But it's really easy to look at them and be like, wow, I wish my craft looked like theirs. And holy fuck, is that not the exact goddamn thing or same thing as being trans? Oh wow, I wish I looked like them. Or being queer.
Mhm.
Oh wow, I wish I looked as queer as them. We're always like doing that to ourselves, and it's so fucking self-sabotaging. But we still can't help but not do it. I'd love to look like, I mean, I look fucking hardcore witch. Like when you see me walking down the street in my dress wearing my mantle and shit, like I obviously look like a witch, but aesthetic isn't practice, you know? And
Right.
like my practice is very minimalist. It doesn't take a lot. It's always kind of working. You know, I'm always connected to it. I'm always having a dialogue, and it's subtle. It's present all the time, but it's not like I have a coven. It's not like I have group rituals or quarter calls I've memorized. It's not like I have poems I've written for gods or grandiose rituals. Hell, Hecate is still pissed off at me because I have failed to muster to give her a ritual every time she has requested it of me, and I think it's actually kind of funny at this point. But that's another discussion. Um, but like, I think the thing that I'm trying to connect with my craft is like the feeling of legitimacy. Like, yeah, I can make stuff happen, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just taking for granted something that works and trying to toss a little bit more into the gears that actually need to be there, you know?
Mhm.
I think this discussion at this point, I think what you're kind of leading towards, Sophia, is more of the discussion of like imposter syndrome.
A little bit.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we're kind of veering off in that direction, but I can see how mental health can affect like imposter syndrome. You know what I mean? Like feeling those same feelings and contributing to that disconnect from your craft. But I would actually love to do an entire episode on that, so I don't want to get too much into it in this one.
Hmm.
Yeah. I didn't plan on like going
But I
into
like
like
how,
the imposter syndrome bit.
yeah, but you kind of realize that like that's kind of just like where you were headed, and I think that's actually really cool that that connection was made because I've been really wanting to do an episode, um, a whole episode on that. Um, but are there? I can't
Yes, I
remember
have
if
more
you
to continue on
mentioned.
that. I have more to continue on that
Yes.
if you want.
Hmm.
So like because of that, I am feeling a little disconnected from my craft. And like a huge part of my work aside from like the mental gymnastics of it all is energy working, and I can't feel the energy for shit lately, and it's been driving me up the fucking wall. And I can't meditate, and I I'm deliberately trying to not dream right now because I have way too much dreams, and I'm like relishing the fact that for a little bit in my life I'm getting a bit of a break. But I know I'm just pushing it all away. And I know that it's gotta come back. And I feel like I gotta like sit down and have that big trip experience, you know?
Hmm.
Definitely. So I
Absolutely.
think we all need to really do that one thing that really is going to reconnect us. And so when like I know me and Scott plan on doing our rededication, what is today? Just to give some context for anyone
On
who's listening to this
Saturday.
at a later date. So Saturday, so we're recording this January 22nd. So Saturday would be the 25th. So January 25th, we'll be doing our rededication ritual, and I would love to in the next episode um, for us to talk about the results of that. I'm just curious, Sophia, like when you had planned on doing like your working or whatever it is that you
By working, do you mean a tab of acid?
is okay, so that's what you're planning on doing. I don't know, like how do you
It
schedule something like that, or does it just kind of happen?
No, no, you ask the universe very politely, and sometimes it drags your heels if you're not so sure about it. But if you're persistent and you keep
Mm.
asking, it'll look at you and say fine and put it down in front of you, and then you take it and you're like, oh shit, I wish I didn't do this. Then afterwards you're like, I needed this, and then it's like, yeah, you're welcome. Good night.
Now, do you feel like you're gonna kind of be still in this limbo state until you can do that, or is there some kind of working that you
I don't
might?
know. It's never a solution. I mean, like, we don't talk a lot about hallucinogenics on the podcast because it is a
Hmm.
very taboo subject, but it's a huge fucking part of a lot of witchcraft practices around the fucking world, and I am so
Hmm.
mad that we can't talk about it and have a larger discussion as a whole in a community because god fucking damn it. Anyways, rat talk.
I mean, we could
It,
always do it like an aside on that. Like, I would be interested in talking with you more on
but
that.
I'm
So we
the
could do like a
person.
mini episode.
That wouldn't be a discussion, it'd be an interview. I'm the only
Well, yeah,
person
that
of
too.
the three of us who uses hallucinogenics in a magic sense, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah,
like, I could
I
talk
still think it
about it,
would be an
but
interesting conversation.
I feel that everyone should find, I guess, their entry point into feeling ready to go on a journey of healing. I think you need to find a way that works best for you. Make sure that you're healing in a healthy, safe manner. And realize that you're not alone. Realize that there are people there, someone somewhere to talk to who truly cares about what you're going to say, you know, who will actively listen and not shun you in any way.
For me, it is difficult to talk about mental health things. It always has been. I'm probably not the person to go to therapy myself, but I'm always the person that will never shame anyone for doing it for themselves. Same with seeking medication for any particular issues, mental health issues. So, but that's just generally not. I just feel like that's not the right path for me. But I will never shame anyone for doing that for themselves. However, I have realized that I think some of the best ways to heal from our trauma is to face it head on. Is to really just interact with it, maybe through meditation, or like Scott did with communicating with their inner child through tarot. So I think there are ways to get very introspective and really dig into the self. Um, on your own. Now, that's if you feel like you can handle something like that. If you feel like you need kind of like an outside source to help you do that, then by all means. There is no one way to heal. There is no one no one size fits all solution for how to recover from any sort of trauma. And I just think it's important that we should respect the choices that each of us make to heal from these traumas. I think that's very important. So, just be mindful of your own path, but don't try not to interfere negatively for someone else's choices. If they decide to, go out into their backyard and smash a bunch of pots to deal with something that they're just angry about, you know what I mean? Like, don't, like, that's just how they're coping with that, just be there for them. Now, if it starts to cause you like mental anguish and bodily harm, obviously remove yourself from the situation. But I just think that we should respect each other's healing process and understand that it's not the same for everyone.
Yeah, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'd like to reach out to people out there who are struggling, like when Scott says you're not alone, I'm the person who hears that from somebody else and goes, yeah, I am. But I want to just kind of flip that on its head a little bit, because I know that's a choice that I make, and a lot of the time we feel like we can't reach out, and we feel like we're alone, because depression lies to you. It does that. It'll make you think that nobody cares about you when people really fucking do. And I know it can be the most impossible thing in the world to believe that someone would want to care about you, but you don't need to necessarily understand it. You just need to believe the people when they say it. And I know that can be hard too. Fuck, trusting anyone can be hard. But it's gonna be hard. That's the point. And it ain't gonna be easy. But I know you can do it. And I'm as much talking to you as I'm talking to myself, as I'm talking to Scott, like, you can do it. It's not going to be fucking easy, but it is not impossible. And I know that sometimes it can be the scariest thing in the world to confront that shit, to talk to someone, to open up, but it's what really is going to make a difference in the end. And I just really want to encourage you to take the steps that you can, open up to anybody that you can, even if it's us. If there's nobody else you can, like, come to our group, say something, we'll be there, but you got to take the step if you want to feel better. And I promise you, it may not be immediately, but eventually you will feel better. And I think that's what I want to close on.
I like that. I like that a lot. So we're gonna wrap it up here. My little ending spiel. We are on. You can follow us on various social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, the big three. And we have a Facebook group, which I will put a link to in our show description now. So the link to the Facebook group will be there. It is a private group. You can search it on Facebook. So you just search it, and then you click the join button, and then someone will approve you. But yeah, the Facebook group is really cool because it allows the conversation to continue even after we're done recording. It's a good little group. It's just getting started, so sometimes we have little quiet periods and little periods of activity, but it's nice. I like how it's progressing, and I like how it's growing, and I look forward to seeing more of you join in.
And I read everything you post there. Literally everything.
Yes,
I read it.
everything is read by Sophia. I read everything too. I just don't always react to everything because a lot of times I'm at work and I'm reading through everything. I really need to make more of an effort to like make some kind of indication that I've looked at it.
Me too.
But yeah, I am reading it. Sophia just makes it very known that she's read it, which is good. At least one of us is. So yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here, and we will see you in the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Love you all so much. Don't you forget to banish.